Good day guys, welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're working on the 2004 LB7 Duramax of mine. We are moving along now. This is going to be a how-to video of how to remove the radiator. So I am removing the radiator personally because I want to get it pressure checked for any kind of leaks. I also want to get it flushed, and I want to make sure that the transmission cooler side of the radiator is flushed extremely well too, so I am not transferring back into my freshly rebuilt transmission, which is not rebuilt yet. But any kind of dirt, debris, contaminants, particles, anything that is going to harm the transmission. So I just want the radiator to be as clean as possible and checked out to make sure that it is good to go for when I get the transmission back in here. I know that the radiator is also good to go and I'm not going to have any leaks. I did not have any leaks previous, and I'm sure it's very plugged up and it needs clean because I noticed that my temperatures were getting a little bit hotter, which is going to result in your transmission temperatures being a little bit hotter too, and you don't want that. You want to keep that transmission as cool as possible. So that's why we are going to be removing the radiator out of this thing today and hopefully shedding some light on some helpful tips, tricks, or just how to do the job if you need to get a radiator out to replace it, whether it's leaking or you're doing a job and you need to flush it like I am, or you're experiencing some overheating issues and you need to get it flushed. So hopefully this video is going to be helpful for you guys. Remember that we're doing a whole series on the Duramax, and if you're liking the content, drop that down in the comment section down below. Smash that thumbs up. All your guys' help is greatly appreciated. It helps the videos. It helps get them out there for other people to see as well. So remember, like, comment, share. Also, if you're not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing to the channel so you don't miss future content and uploads. And if this is videos that you like to see and you want to see other stuff or what's going on with the Duramax, and if these Duramax videos really start taking off and you guys are really liking them, we'll start doing even more stuff to the pickup. It all kind of comes with time and money, but I would like to do more to it as well. But that's enough of me babbling on. Let's hop into getting the radiator out of this thing. Okay, so the first thing you want to do for removing the radiator is you're going to just pop this hose out of this clamp to get it out of the way. You're going to have to remove this upper shroud, and then there's a lower shroud as well, along with a few other things, a few hoses. But for this upper shroud, you're going to have 10mm bolts. You're going to have 4 across the top, and then here is the other 2, so you got 2 on each side. And then on your shroud, on the lower part down below, you're going to have 2 bolts as well, holding the upper shroud to the lower shroud, and I'll show you that when we get to that point. So at this point, if you want to, you can unplug your TCM to get it out of the way. If you don't, you just want to fold it back like this, you can do that as well. So totally your call of what you want to do. For me, I'm probably just going to fold it back just like this, and that's going to be good enough. So for the lower, those are not bolts. You can see there's one here and then one right down in there. Those are just plastic push pins. I just like to use a flat tip screwdriver, pry up the center section, then I can pop those out. Once you do that, there's 2 on each side. Then you can pull off this upper fan shroud off your radiator here. So here's what those push pins look like. That is the center section that I just pried up, and then they will pop out. I've got all 4 of them removed. Another thing to mention is if you want to remove this plastic cover off of your TCM, you just have 2 plastic tabs, one right here, one right here. You pry those up, and then this TCM will come out, and you can get this cover out of your way to free up a little bit more room. But I got everything off for this upper shroud, so it will just pull right out, giving you more access to go ahead and start getting more stuff off. Now with the lower shroud, you're going to want to just lift up. As you can see, that came away from the radiator on both sides. That is going to basically get these little clips off of the side of the radiator. Once you get that lifted off so it's not attached, it is fairly loose now. So now we're going to drain the coolant in it. One thing you want to do so it makes it a little bit easier is just go ahead and pull off your reservoir cap. That way it can vent easier for draining the coolant. I'll show you where the drain's at. We'll get the coolant draining. We have a line here we need to unhook. We have 2 trans cooler lines that also need unhooked. Upper radiator hose, and as you can see, I did remove the plastic cover on the TCM. And then on the passenger side down below is you're going to have your lower radiator hose. I do have my inner wheel well out because if you're following along, as you know, we are doing the transmission. We're going to be rebuilding it. But with this out, you can have full access right here. If I can point right there to your lower radiator hose, you can get to that clamp, you can pop that, hose off as well, but that is the lower one, and this is on the passenger side. Also, over here, you do not have to have the inner wheel well out, but it does make it easier. But as you can see right here where I'm pointing at, this is your drain on the passenger side as well. You can use a pair of pliers to loosen this up. They're normally not super tight, but you're just going to loosen that up. It's going to drain. It does make a mess because it kind of hits on the frame and some wiring, but just get a good drain pan down below and drain your coolant into that. Depending on if you need to change your coolant or not, it's totally up to you. If you need a clean one, I'm keeping a clean drain pan because my coolant is good and I am going to reuse it. For me, I don't like to take the plug all the way out because it's going to come gushing, so I just loosen up like that until it gets slower, and then I'll remove it all the way. That way it can drain out fully. But as I said, if you remove it all the way, it's going to come spraying out of there big time, so right there is kind of perfect. So next we're going to remove the upper radiator hose. These clamps do have a clip, so if you squeeze them all the way, they will clip and stay open. For me, I don't really like doing that. It's just sometimes they're just kind of a pain to release. So I'm just going to squeeze until it almost clips, working the hose off of the radiator neck. Just like that there, and I'll let the tension go back onto that clamp. But right there, we got the upper radiator hose off. Let's hop over to the other side and get that smaller vent line off. So same style of clamp, just a little bit smaller. Gonna do the same exact thing that we did with the upper radiator hose. Just like that. That one comes off easier because it is a smaller line. Tuck these lines kind of anywhere up out of your way, so when you're pulling the radiator, they're not getting in your way. Now the only thing we have left is the two tranny cooler lines. And just like on the transmission, see? Say tuck that line out of your way so it doesn't fall back in your way. There we go. Just like on the transmission, you're going to have this plastic cover. Gently pry it back. That way you don't break it or damage it. This cover is a retainer for the little snap ring or retaining clip. Once you get that off, just slide that back. You can see the retaining clip right here. Take a small screwdriver or a pick and just get up under it. You're going to want to be careful so you don't lose them. And then just pry it off. Right here is that clip. That line is now loose. You can do the same thing on the lower line and then just pop both of these lines. You're just going to pull them. They're just going to pop right out of the side of the radiator there. So the coolant is still draining, as you can see. All we have left under here is just the lower radiator hose. Once we pop that lower radiator hose off, I do believe we are ready to go ahead and pull the radiator itself. I'm just letting this drain slowly because, as I mentioned, if you pull that out, the drain plug for the antifreeze or the coolant, it spews everywhere, and I'm trying to minimize my mess in the garage as much as possible. But as you know, watching this video, I am pulling the radiator so I can get it pressure checked, the cooling system flushed, as well as the internal cooling system for the transmission, because I don't want any debris, any junk, anything like that going through my cooler lines back to my transmission and ruining a nice fresh build. I'm also going to go ahead and change my transmission cooler. Transmission cooler, you can see, is this little cooler right up front right here. So basically all I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this top cover, and there is 7 of these push pins. I've showed you before, they do make tools. I just use a little flat tip screwdriver, pry up the centers, pop out the push pin. It'll remove this cover, and it's going to give me access to the transmission cooler to remove it as well. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this cover. If you want, you can remove the grill, because that's going to give you straight shot access to that transmission cooler, but I'm changing it because I want a bigger one, a better one, with more cooling, more fluid volume in it. And this old one, either you're going to do a hot flush to flush the radiator that we are removing and the transmission cooler, or as I'm doing, I'm removing the radiator to have it boiled and cleaned out, and I'm just going to change the transmission cooler itself. So here's what it's like with that top piece removed. Yes, there is a lot more access to the transmission cooler. As you can see, I can reach down in here, but the lines are down on the bottom of the cooler, and it's the same kind of clips that we pulled off on the radiator. So to access those lines a bit easier so we don't lose the clips or damage anything like that, I am going to go ahead and remove the grill just to give a little bit more access. There is just these metal clips that are retainers that hold the grill in. You can basically just kind of pry the grill out. You want to be careful because the grill is plastic. You don't want to break it. You're gonna have a clip here on both sides. There's also a clip right behind here. So I am going to go ahead and just remove the headlight because it is super easy to do by pulling this pin. Get that out of the way. Pop this headlight out a little bit. And right there, I have access very easily to that clip because I don't want to risk busting up my grill and just tearing it up. So you're gonna have a clip right down here on the bottom on both sides. There is the other one. So those are all the clips that hold the grill in. So I'm gonna go ahead and pop those clips out, get that grill out of the way to gain more access to that transmission cooler. As you can see, I got the side popped out. Not only do you want to pop out the upper headlight because this needs to clear past it, but to get down to that clip to release it. I will show you real quick on this side right here. Getting these clips is very easy. If you just get right in between the metal right here and the bracket where it is clipped into, little screwdriver, just a little bit of pressure, pops it right out. So you're gonna wanna do that with the two bottom clips, these two top ones, and each side one that is behind the headlights right here. So I just popped my headlights back in so they're not hanging out, but as you can see, I went ahead, pulled the grill, very easy. Only 6 clips holding it in, both headlights are in, and now you can see the access that you have gained getting to your transmission cooler. So tons of room. Remember, just pop these little covers off that hold the retaining ring. Pop the retaining rings out so you don't lose them. Very simple, very easy to get to. You got a little sensor here that is going to have to just pry out of the bracket, and then you have 4 bolts right here that are holding it on to take the tranny cooler out. Okay, so I got the lower radiator hose off. Pop the trans cooler lines out of the radiator. When you do that, make sure your drain pan is out of the way because they are going to leak some trans fluid out of those lines when you pop them loose. Last thing that you have to do up top on the radiator, right here where my finger's at, I know it's really hard to see, but there is a bolt here mounting the radiator. Another one down further below it, and same on the other side here. You can see here is that top bolt, and then there's one below that as well. So remove those 4 bolts. That should loosen this radiator up, and it should be ready to pull out. So the 2 lower bolts have this clamp. It goes in just like so, and it holds the radiator in. The upper bolts are these longer bolts. You're gonna need a 13mm ratchet wrench, is very handy, and a socket and ratchet for the upper ones. But now this radiator is loose in here, so I'm gonna go ahead and pull it out. So this part's going to be a little bit different for everyone. I removed my cold air intake right here to gain enough access to get the radiator past this AC line and this top bracket right here for the charge air cooler. Because with my cold air intake, there wasn't enough room to pop that radiator past to pull it up. So removing your cold air intake is going to be different depending on what cold air intake you have. What's going to be the same is you're going to have your bottom plate where it mounts. It's all 10mm. I used a ratchet wrench for it. I removed this lower plate. Then you have this bracket here that's bolted up as well. I loosened it from the coolant reservoir, and then you have 2 bolts, a top one and a bottom one. I took those 2 bolts out with that one loose just to swing this out of the way a little bit. That gave me enough room to pull the radiator, as you saw. So that is one thing right here that I had to do just to gain enough access to get the radiator out. Other than that, that is all there is to it. It wasn't too bad at all getting this radiator out. Not that big of a deal. We will be going back in with it. Going back in is going to be just the opposite of removing it. So just remember that. Keep all your nuts and bolts, everything together, all your clips. That way you remember where they go and you won't have any issues whatsoever. The radiator's here, just want to show it. There is a few places where the fins are kind of bent over. That's not from me taking it out. That's just from previous, who knows what went on. You can see the other side here. I'll tip this back a little bit, but you can see how dirty this radiator is on the front, so it is definitely needing cleaned out. And that is one of the reasons why I took it out, is so I can have my radiator flush, but then also where the trans cooler lines hook up to flush out that side of it as well, so both sides are clean for coolant and for the transmission fluid. I can't stress it enough. That way I won't get any contaminants into my newly rebuilt transmission, taking out any clutches or anything, so it'll all be fresh fluid. As I mentioned, it'll get a new trans cooler, so that'll be clean as well. And then I will just flush out the lines, which is no big deal there. So here is the transmission cooler that I went with. I went with the PPE. This is their bar and plate design. We'll just do a quick little unboxing here. I'll show you the difference between the stock cooler and this one. Packaging, really nice. Little info here on their transmission oil spin-on filter. So we have some installation instructions. Very nice thick foam padding and packaging to protect this. And then in here we have the transmission cooler. On each side we've got the fittings that are going to screw in to the bottom of each side, so it is retaining the same factory connection going into here, so you don't have to add any kind of rubber hoses or anything with that. That's why I was drawn to this one, because I didn't want to have to add in any rubber hoses going from my factory lines to the trans cooler. But then you also have another one on this side and the trans cooler here. So let me get this thing out of the package. You can see it is cut in some very nice thick foam. There is foam underneath of it and above it. So we'll get this thing out. I'll show you the difference between this and the other one, and we will get it installed. So as you can see here, here is the factory one behind it. You can see the size, the thickness of the factory one compared to this PPE. Huge difference. A lot more area, a lot more cooling surface to help keep those trans temps down. When I get this installed, I will put the stock one in front of it. But basically all you're going to need to do to install this is you're going to remove the two 10mm bolts at the top, and then you're going to have one on each side. And then you're going to have your temp sensor. You're going to have to remove this out of this bracket, because this bracket is going to be removed and come off. And as you guys know, if you're following the series, I do already have the trans cooler lines unhooked. You can see them just sitting down here. If you need to unhook those, you just pull that little snap ring off of the fitting and just kind of push down on the lines and they will pop out. So I'm going to go ahead and get this thing removed, the stock one, and we will get the new one installed. It is going to be a very quick and easy installation with this trans cooler. So the cooler is upside down, but there is these slip nuts on each side. These are the top ones. You're going to have to go ahead and take these off of the bracket on the OE cooler, and then you're going to take them and you're going to slide them on right here on the front bracket for the bolts to go through the new cooler, bolting up to this. Using a flat tip screwdriver might help you pry them off of the old bracket, and then literally all for here, you just got to push them on, and that is all you have to do there. The lower ones have a nut, it's threaded on the inside that is welded in, so you don't have to worry about doing anything down there. Here is those slip nuts just slid on. That is what they're going to look like right there. Just slide those top two on, and now I'm going to bring the cooler in, and I'm going to just use the 4 bolts that I took off of the old one and bolt the new one up. So you can see here it is bolted up, and the instructions, they say to install the fittings first before you bolt it up. For me, I'm putting it in here so this cooler can be bolted down, held down, and I'm going to put the fittings in now and just tighten them down. You're going to need 1 1/4 inch socket for those fittings, and then you have your little temp sensor here. That was taken off the old bracket, and there's not anywhere that you can see for it to go. So basically all I'm going to do is I'm going to just drill a hole in this bracket here for this sensor just to press down through. So I will do the same size hole that is on the old bracket for the old trans cooler, just to bolt this somewhere. I mean, there is other places that you could probably go with it. You can try to find a spot somewhere, but for me, I think that's what I'll do. If I end up doing something different, I will show what I did. So I've got the fittings put in and tightened down. All you're going to do is take your lines, press your lines up through the bottom. The snap rings are in. Right there, you can hear it click. Give it a good pull, make sure that it's locked in. Pull up your little retainer cover and pop that back over the fitting, and do that for both of these lines. And that is the installation of this trans cooler. So very easy, went very smooth. I would say it's like a 30-minute job removing the grill and everything, so not hard to do at all. Huge upgrade, gonna get a lot cooler tranny temps, which is what I am going for, and that is what you want because heat is hard on transmissions. wearing them down and reducing the lifespan of them. So super excited for this, but that is the installation of that. We'll get the grill put back in, see if you can see it through the grill. I also still need to do the sensor, as I mentioned, and I will let you guys and I will show you what I've done on that. Okay, so you can see I have the transcooler mounted. Both lines are hooked up. What I did end up doing was just drilling a hole right here for that sensor into this bar. It's just an aluminum bar, super easy to drill. That sensor is now solid, not in the way of anything, and it is mounted securely. So that is what I did for that sensor. So if you are installing a PPE transcooler that eliminates that bar, that's what you're going to need to do. And I used a 13/32 drill bit for that hole, and as you can see, that sensor is nice and tight, snug in there. So a 13/32 drill bit is the ticket for doing that there. So yes, I know the transcooler is upside down, but you can see the overall size of the PPE compared to this one and the thickness of the two. So you can see it a bit better than what I was showing before, but that PPE just eats up this little one in size. Okay, so we got the radiator out. Honestly, not that hard of a job. The only thing that kind of got me stuck a little bit is removing the air intake. I didn't think I was gonna have to do that, but I would strongly recommend removing that air intake just to free up a little bit of room to wiggle that radiator up out of there, because it was a bit tighter. Honestly though, not a hard job to do, very easy. It's just maybe a little messy because you got to drain coolant. Me personally, I hate the way coolant feels on my skin, so I try to keep it as clean as possible, but overall removing it, not hard at all. I don't think I'm going to do an install video of the radiator, just for the simple fact the install is going to be the reverse procedure of removing it. Not super hard. You have your upper radiator hose, your lower, your two transcooler lines, and then also your upper vent line, your TCM, fan shroud, air intake. So not real hard to put it back in. So if you're going to put it back in, I'm not going to have an install or how-to video on installing the radiator. Just do it in the reverse procedure. So very simple. I was pleased with how easy it came out. The thing is super dirty. It does need cleaned. I'm glad I'm pulling it out and I'm doing this because personally it is something that needs to be done. And it was something that I would highly recommend any of you doing as well. Hopefully this video was helpful and informative for you. If it was, remember, smash that thumbs up, drop a comment down below of what you thought. Also, if you're not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing to the channel, and I will catch you all in the next one. And until then, take care.